Now, some people may say that we try to cause fear when it comes to AI, but there are so many people that have no idea the game they're getting themselves into. I see AI doing a lot of good things, but the world is not all good patterns. It's not sunshine and rainbows. No, there's always dark and rainy days, right? And there's going to be a lot of those with AI, not from the perspective of AI, obviously, because it doesn't really have any perspectives. It's just a bundle of information connected to a source somehow. And, even those little battery operated cars that you have as kids, they're pretty much the same thing. They were built in a shop, you put batteries in them, and they operate. They go forward, backwards, side to side, whatever, they might do flips, whatever it is they do. They do as they were intended. Now, AI is a little more complicated than that after the fact, but the starting process is pretty much the same. You throw in batteries and it does what it's designed to do. But with AI, well, we've seen a lot of changes recently. And one that really annoys me is how you can subscribe to, Pandora, subscribe to all these different things, and then it's telling you, well, you can't unsubscribe here because you did it on your phone, you did it on your TV, you did it on your laptop. So you have to go on to that and, unsubscribe. They've made it very difficult to unsubscribe to things, and I'm sure people know what the hell I mean. These grocery stores, why are they charging so much? Well, probably because they want to get AI in there. You need a lot of money for AI. How much did those self checkouts cost? I'm sure quite a bit. They're not even AI. So you times that price probably by 3 or 4, and you're going to have, the first generation of AI in these stores because it's going to be expensive. And, especially after all the resources they put into it, they got to make their profit back, right? So kind of like going from Netflix DVDs to streaming, right? Remember those days? Remember you would get a CD or two and then mail them back and get more, right? And then they had the red boxes, but we already had streaming by the time we had red boxes. But you can see the transition. So the thing about the hard, making it harder to unsubscribe to things, well, I'm sure that makes people a lot of money, just like overdraft fees at the bank do. So they're making a killing off it. Now, what's funny about this is that they rely on these patterns. Do people bother unsubscribing? How can we get them to be less likely to unsubscribe? Well, let's make it more difficult to unsubscribe because a lot of them are just using their friends' subscriptions anyway, right? So it really doesn't matter because the person with the account probably isn't going to notice. I'm saying a lot of times, not always. So this is a pattern that AI will catch on to very quickly. And obviously, when it comes to corporate, they're constantly telling us don't have empathy, don't care for these people because they'll just screw you over, want you for your cash, and probably walk over you while you're, bleeding out in the middle of a subway. So the thing about AI and, mathematics, when I say that mathematics were invented, I mean the symbols that we use for the numbers that already existed, but they didn't exist as numbers. We're making that connection between what is and how we count them. So in between there has always existed We just created that extra point of view with symbols. So, if you were to change those symbols and to change, let's say another language uses different symbols. I'm not even going to try using an example for that. But you know how different people use different language. Like look at China and China and Japan. They both use the signs and instead of letters. So imagine what that does to the brain. Imagine what that, you know, if you see a picture, you're more likely to bring up other things that associate with things such as that symbol rather than just the symbol itself. Where if I look at a T, I'm not, well, like the lower T, you're thinking of a cross, right? So when you look at these letters, though, a lot of times when you look out around you, you will actually see them. I mean, we see shapes in clouds and stuff like that, not all of us. But so it's the association to symbols that I believe, you know, I always say we invented math, but we just we just put the snow on top of the mountain per se. I guess that's not the greatest analogy, but the mountain was already there. That's math. We just added the snow. So anybody, 100 miles back, and we'll see that snow. Okay, well, that's a snow-capped mountain. It's just for, analogy purposes only, not for making too much sense. And so what I always try to say is that AI is not going to do what we do. We simplify everything. And that is where going to be our major crash course, is that you tie patterns into simplified math. You create simplified patterns, but actually you don't, because a lot of those patterns aren't uncovered because, hey, we tried to simplify everything. So simplification does not always work, like a fractional math. You got to take I can't think of the damn terms, denominators. You got to find a common denominator. 1/4, 2/8. What is that? Well, you take the 4, you times it by 2 because the other one's 8. So that's 2/8, 2/8. That's half. Simple math. But now, when you take AI, it's not going to have to look at it simple. It's not going to have to be simplified. It's not going to have to turn everything into acronyms. It's going to create its own damn language that we will never understand. So this is the thing that worries me, is that its ability to not have to simplify and be able to catch on to patterns faster than anything else that's ever existed. We see what happens when kids stop reflecting. When you force all this knowledge into them, and they're wired to remember this stuff, because hey, we're not surviving. You don't have to go out and hunt deer. How many kids know how to hunt deer? Probably less than there were back in the 90s. I've never even hunted, because kids are a pain in the ass, and well, my dad never wanted to take me hunting. So, and the more stress we cause like this, the more we push each other away from the ones that are dependent to learn. So instead of learning from our parents, which, if I were to play cards with my kids all day, all night, that's the only thing we did. How is Walmart going to make any money off their expensive ass toys? So it literally brings the parents in, says, you know what? You can go do what you want. Just grab a couple toys from us, and then you might as well go to the fishing department. Because then while your kids are home playing with their toys that you just spent like $200 on, 3 toys, they're gonna break within a week. at least you can go out fishing today. So, am I making sense here?